What's going on? Welcome back with another video on my channel. This video comes from TikTok from a user by the name of BrookEar81, and it's going into why, you know, single mothers are having a harder time dating than women that are single with no children. So without further ado, let's get into it and we'll see what's up. Also, the link for her original video will be tagged in the description box of my channel. Here we go.
Tonight's post is going to be very raw, maybe the most raw that I've ever made. I am heartbroken tonight, and rather than just keep it inside, I feel like I should just let it out. So, dating as a single mom is hard. Like, it's really, really freaking hard. And I have been dating somebody that I have been on and off with for years, and like this time I thought it, and they couldn't handle my child. And so I said to this person, if you can't handle him, then we're wasting our time. And that was the last I've heard. And I totally understand that like not everybody is capable of the same thing.
It's not really about handling the child because it depends on, a lot of factors go into that. It's the fact that if the man wants to go out and do something, or, go to dinner, go hiking, go spend an intimate time with just you, there's always the third wheel, but the child in this case, he's always there. You got to plan around that. You got to try to link up with the father so the father can keep him, or family member, daycare, whatever the case is. There's always additional steps that you have to take if you're trying to spend time just the two of you alone. And she doesn't say anything about a father being in, and if she was married, if she wasn't married, the status, if he's still alive, if she passed away, because a lot of times too that, circumstances that out of their control, like say he passes, or something happens where he's no longer there, say, versus like incarceration, or the guys just didn't see eye to eye, divorce, or it was just a hookup, you got pregnant and the father's not there in that situation. There's always different cases where they or single mother is in that they can't control. However, things that she can't control are, open her legs, just letting anyone bust, and she got pregnant in the result of it. Things you can't control, yeah, it's on you. You got to live with your mistakes. But in this instance, I'm going to take it for whatever the case is. She doesn't state anything about that. So just say, for instance, that she did do that. She was irresponsible, had a kid. Because a lot of women are in either situation, you know. But for this case, she single mother, irresponsible. A guy doesn't want to be there if he has to be there with the kid. Some are, depending on the situation. Like, say for instance, myself, I have 4 children. My children are grown. They're not a factor. They're 20s. They're older. So that's never going to be a situation for me. Back before had children, I would never date anyone that had children, because why would I want to put up with that when I could just go hook up with somebody who's single with no kids? But being older, being wiser, having worldviews about certain things, you know, it's not a big deal to me. Dating someone with a kid, long as they're not like babies or unruly. Because a guy, if especially if kids unruly, why would I put myself in it? I can go find somebody else. If they're really young, newborn up to the age of 3, the father's still there, and so it comes up to the father what type of relationship do they have. Is going to be drama, because one, guys try to avoid drama, women love drama. We try to have peaceful lives. You know, some they're up for it, they want to do that. Like what some people call crash dummies, or you know, trying to finish another man's unsafe game. I find it hilarious when people say it like that, but at the same time too, it's like, you know, I can't really judge because I have children myself. I don't know what it's like to have to raise them, from complete babies up to a certain point by themselves. But I know being there throughout their lives, still, as they grow, as they come of age, that's what I know. So I don't know what it's like, but at the same time, she told him to leave. You can't fault the guy for leaving if he doesn't want to deal with that. Like I said, some guys, take it for what it is. They will, and some won't. So, some call the guy simps. Oh, you're gonna, be with that woman. She got a kid. If you got kids, whatever. Just take it for how you want to take it. Some will step up and do it. And just because a man doesn't step up or does, that's not considered a real man for coming in to be with a single mother. Because some people say it as a real man. I don't think you're just being a man. Empathy, sympathy, along those lines. But just because a man doesn't take care of a kid doesn't mean he's a weak man or he's sassy. That's not what he wants. It's called preferences. We're all out preferences, but don't shame the guy if he comes in and says he doesn't want to be there with you with a kid. You can't shame him for that. He has options. But to caveat, if he sees her with a kid and he still wants to date her, and then he chooses not later on in life, he can't use that as an excuse. You got kids. Would you good and hell well seen that she had kids prior to hooking up with her?
And not everybody wants to be a parent. Not everybody wants to be a step parent.
Especially when you're young.
But when you see a woman with children and you don't want to be part of that and you don't want to sacrifice, stay the hell away.
You can see that she's upset about it. So that probably was the case. He saw her with kids, and like I say, some guys, easy pickings. She's gonna be desperate. She's gonna have a need, and he's just there for the fun time. You know, a lot of guys do think that way. 'Cause I know I used to do that back in the day when I was younger, before kids. Easy target, get what you need, move on. There's no type of ties or connections. But like I said, as I've gotten older, have children on my own, know what that's like. You know, you think differently because of your experience. And so a lot of women out here, they're hurt and they want to have somebody, but they know it's more difficult to date, which is why I tell a lot of women, especially on like different forums and sites like this, and I get a lot of pushback for it. Focus on your kid, do right for your kid, get up to a certain age where they become more independent, and then start dating. And it's not preferential for that, but do that. You have more success doing so because you don't have this young kid that's always going to be there. That's going to be needing more of your time versus you devoting your time to the man. That's what a man wants. If he's going to be with you, he wants your time, he wants your attention. You know, but having a single child, especially when they're really young, he's not going to get that. Some guys are mature enough to understand that, like my fiance. I met her. You know, the kid was 5. Now he's 10. You know, I've got pushback from friends and other why. Like, I got kids myself. My kids are older, so I'm okay with it. I'm chill. But some people don't think that way. So take it for what it is. You know, both sides, have different opinions, different thoughts about it. But if you're a woman out there, let me know your thoughts about her situation, about what I said. Because, like I said, everybody doesn't see eye to eye. Everybody doesn't want to finish another man save game. That's a video game analogy where, you play a game, you stop playing that game to go do something else, play another game. Some guys come back to finish their game, the guy who started the game. And sometimes another guy comes in to play that game and start up right where you left off at. Like, what the fuck? And try to move on from there. So a lot of guys don't want to do that. Some guys do. Depends on where you are in life. If you're single, no kids, somewhat successful, I say don't do it because you don't know what life is like yet. Make your own family. Some will. Like I said, circumstances vary. But let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section below. Like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and I'll catch you next video. Peace.